Toronto real estate prices and number of transactions have gone up almost every single month this year. Is a statement that I would have made in 2021, but I'm making it in 2025 and it feels like it's a lie. But in today's video, I'm going to show you what the numbers are actually showing us from the Toronto Real Estate Board, specifically focused here on the city of Toronto. This is going to be a bird's eye view video. We're going to take a look at what happened in June, look over those numbers, but really take a step back here and take a look for the first 6 months. Crazy that we've already gotten halfway through 2025. Here's what's happened in the market. I'm going to break it into 4 different categories and show you what is actually going on. My name's Tom. Thank you for being here. Like this video if you learned anything new. Get subscribed and go into the first link in the description and book a call with our team because we are very passionate about real estate. We are good at what we do. I think you'll have a great experience. All right, let's just jump right into it today. I'm going to go back and forth with all the things I put together for you today. And we're going to start with June 2025. So your average price was still over $1.1 million. And then just to the right side here, I've got the median price, which was $972,000. Again, this is City of Toronto only. Your months of inventory for the City of Toronto was sitting at 5. So the entire city is technically in a balanced market, although we know many property types, specifically condos, are heavily pushed into a buyer's market. Your active inventory in terms of active listings at the end of June was 11,736, and we had 2,319 sales. So if you take 11,736 and you divide it by 2,319, you get 5, and that is the inventory level. So that is from like a bird's eye perspective what the city of Toronto did for housing prices, and this is across all property types for June of 2025. Now the number that you're going to see in other YouTube videos or across the media is the fact that we're still sitting at over 30,000 active listings for the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board, which as I've discussed many times on this channel, represents 7 different areas. The city of Toronto, which is my main focus, has about 11,000. We just talked about this, just almost 12,000 listings. So the city of Toronto represents 37% of the overall numbers that you're hearing from the media reports. So just something to keep in mind as you're looking at the numbers and you see like a bold statement being made by the media. 37% of that bold statement is the city of Toronto. The much bigger bulk of it, York Region, Durham, Simcoe County. There's all these different ones that we put together here. But that's really what's happening in the city of Toronto for inventory level. Now, let's take a step back and think about active listings. Of those almost 12,000 active listings, what were they? Well, at the end of June for the city of Toronto, this is what our real estate active listing landscape is looking like. Over 3,000 detached properties. Now, that number, although significantly lower than the condo number we're about to talk about next, that's pretty high. Like, detached homes are very much in a balanced out, some neighborhoods of Toronto pushing to buyer's market territory. So there's a good chunk of detached homes on the market. Nothing really compares to the condo inventory we have. And this is, by the way, just condo apartments, so not including condo townhouses. You can see that it's still the biggest percentage of our overall market. 7,000 listings almost. You add in condo townhouse, another 836. That is the biggest bulk of everything that is for sale right now in the city of Toronto. Then you got your semi-detached homes, 641 active listings. Attached row townhouse means a freehold property that is not a semi or a detached, but there's 2 on each side. You could get an end row townhouse as well in these scenarios, but there's no condo fees associated. And then other would be like co-op properties and things like that. So this is what's actually going on with inventory levels for the city of Toronto, at least for the end of June 2025. Now let's take a quick peek at what the numbers are actually telling us in terms of average sale price for different property types. So your detached home, still almost 1.7, your semi, 1.3, townhouse 950, and condos surprisingly went up, which makes no sense. It does make sense. I'll explain to you why that's happening. It's because more of the bigger units are selling, which is pushing up the average sale price, and the smaller stuff that is cheaper is not really selling. And that's why it looks like prices are going up. So it's super confusing, but it's not really actually what's happening. There's just more expensive, bigger properties that are selling versus the smaller stuff that used to have the investor demand. And then if you look at year over year, like, well, what's happened with actual prices? Because again, this is usually the media headline number. Well, detached were down 6%. Semis not really down much, less than a percentage. Townhouses 5% and condos 4.3%. When I started this video, I said to you that housing prices and number of transactions have almost gone up every single month in a row so far in 2025. And that seems like I'm telling you like a flat out lie, but the numbers are true. So I want to show you why those numbers are doing that, and then maybe explain it in a different way and show you another way that we can measure it to really show what's going on. What we're going to break down here, I'm going to break this into 4 different categories and give you a recap so far of what's happened in 2025. We're going to talk about sale price. We're going to talk about the number of transactions that are happening, which are the firm sales. Then we're going to talk about your active listings, what we've seen active listings do to see that, we've been growing really fast with active listings, but are we now kind of plateauing into the summer? And then the general months of inventory across all property types for the city of Toronto. So let's start with sale price. And this is where I really wanted to spend some time here today, because you hear this and it doesn't really make any sense. So the top yellow line is average price. I got average and median prices in here. This is for the entire city of Toronto for all property types combined every month so far in 2025. And you can see that average sale price, I guess you could say peaked. It's not really a peak, but peaked out in March and dropped a little bit in April and went up a little bit in May and dropped a little bit in June. But it's kind of been sitting there. And the January numbers, by the way, are always low. It doesn't matter what January says. It's just always like that every single year. You can look back. But then you look at the median sale price, what I'd say is probably a better representation, because it's like the middle number of all the sales, where averages can be skewed by outliers. And median price actually went up again in June. So like, why would median price go up when we have more listings than we're used to, more than probably ever before, historically low sales volume? I think it goes back because when you're using these metrics and you have so many condos for sale, but not many are selling, and when they do sell, they're lower price points. Perhaps that's why these numbers are saying this. But there's a third way that we can look at this, and it's benchmark price. So you can look up the exact definition of benchmark price, but essentially it's saying the typical property. So it's really trying to take out all the outliers. So if you look at benchmark price, and we start here at the beginning of 2025, the y-axis starts at 975 and goes to $1 million, right? So we're talking about $25,000 delta here. It's not that big a deal, but you can see that actually, no, prices have come down, and they've come down again. Not big amounts, $10,000 to $20,000 across the entire market, but this is probably a more true representation of what the market is actually doing, which makes a lot more sense, just based on like how many listings we have and how many sales are actually happening. Then we're going to jump into monthly sales. So up until June, actually, sales volume went up every single month. This happens almost every single year. The difference in 2025 is that the number of transactions taking place is still very, very low, right? It's like it's going up, but if you look back compared to other years for the first 6 months, these total amount of transactions happening would probably be nowhere close, or like cut in half, or maybe 70% of other typical years that we see across the board. But sales did drop down a little bit in June from what we saw in May. Active listings. We started the year in January in the city of Toronto with almost 7,000 active listings. By May, it almost doubled, right? Well, I guess didn't technically double. That'd be 14,000, but it got to almost 12,000. So it went up pretty significantly. You see every single month, your listing inventory was building. And going back to the chart we looked at earlier, we know what was happening here. Condo listings were coming to the market at a rapid pace, and the bigger percentage of detached homes than we are generally used to were coming to the market. So this buildup in inventory is mostly probably 70 to 80% condos, and then the other percentage being detached homes, and then spread across all the other property types that we've seen. And then the final chart I want to show you today is months of inventory. So this is what it's done so far in 2025. Again, this is a bird's eye view perspective. This is not property types. Small condos, you're at over 10 months of inventory. Semi-detached properties, you're still under 2 in certain areas of Toronto. So it's all dependent on what you are trying to do in what specific pocket. But your months of inventory for the city of Toronto has generally hovered around 5, which is balanced but pushing towards buyer's market. But overall, it's been a really interesting first 6 months of the year. And I'm really curious because in my own business, I've seen things pick up a little bit recently. And when I say that, I don't mean that prices are going up. That's not what I mean. But we've had quite a few properties that are on the market for a while that are now getting sold. It's starting this little domino effect. So we have a lot of people in our business that they want us to list their condo for them, to sell their condo. And once the condo is sold, then they're going to go buy a house. But they can't afford to buy the house because they need the sale proceeds from the condo, but the condo takes longer to sell. Now that those condos are starting to sell and we're discovering the prices that we need to be at, they're now ready to go buy houses. So we just had 3 of these different things where we got condos sold, and then 3 people all went out and bought houses in a week. So it's like, I feel like there was a lot of sales that weren't happening because people that were trying to sell their condo to move up just couldn't do it unless there was a firm sale on their property. But I'd like to know what you think. What do you think of the first 6 months of 2025? I'm not an economist. I'm just a real estate agent. So I'm going to focus on what I know and what I understand. But what I know right now is that if you are priced right, you sell, but it takes longer than before. If you're a buyer, it all depends on what type of property type you are looking to buy, and being strategic and understanding the numbers and working with people that not just know the numbers, but are on the ground level, seeing how things are playing out. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Tom Storey, and remember, home is where your story begins.